All right, let's go ahead and take a look at file inclusion and SQL injection. All right, we're not going to really focus too much on the SQL injection blind. We're mostly going to use SQL map for that. But we'll look at file inclusion. We'll look at fuzzing for those parameters again, utilizing FUF. We'll look at SQL injection. We'll look at utilizing SQL injection and with both just manually and also with SQL map. And then we'll go ahead and we'll do that SQL injection blind section. You can do that on your own utilizing SQL map. So starting off with file inclusion. What file inclusion is when you actually call for a file that's on the server itself. So let's say I could look for Etsy password or something like that, right? So what we see here is we have this page equals at the very top of our URL up here. So if we go ahead and we actually do something like // which means, as we know now, back one directory, right? We're going to go back to the very beginning. We're just going to keep putting those in, Etsy password, and we could see that we dropped down the Etsy password. Now this is pretty ugly, so do a Control U, all right, and you should be able to get it in a much nicer. There we go, and we can see everyone that belongs to the system. Now obviously with file inclusion, we can also see who is allowed on that system. So we see this username right here, such as something like MSF admin, right? And once we see that MSF admin, we now know that that user is allowed on this file system. We've already become www data, but we could try to go back to that brute force one, try to maybe brute force MSF admin's password, right? We could try something like that. We could try looking their home directory. We could try looking their home.ssh. So we could do home MSF admin.ssh IDRSA. Okay, something like that, right? We have to look at we can't look at directories. We have to look at the actual file itself. Something else to remember is what user we are. We can only look at what we are allowed to look at, right? So as www data, I can't look at the roots.sh directory. I can't do that. Okay, I can't look at their IDRSA or anything like that. So we have to look at we can only look at what we're allowed to look at. So let's go ahead and let's grab this up here and let's try to use this with fuzz. Let's try to fuzz this, and we'll see if we can go ahead and maybe pull some stuff down that maybe we didn't know existed, or just see, a much faster manner instead of sitting there trying to figure out what we can look at, what we can't look at. We can fuzz it and we can see, hey, how do we actually, what can we actually find out, and is this actually vulnerable to local file inclusion? So we do our FUF, right? And we're just going to do our TAC U. Right, we're going to put in our URL here, and we'll go ahead and we will say, hey, we don't want all those // slashes. We already know what that exists, right? So we're going to delete all that information like right there. We're just going to do page equals fuzz. Okay. You may notice that your Kali machine is moving a little bit slower. That's just because of all the different Dockers that are running on it, things like that. A lot of stuff's happening on this thing right now, especially as we attack it and stuff. So we'll say fuzz. Right, now we need a word list for that directory, so we can do attack W. SecList again is a great resource for this. So we can do a user share. Whoop. If it oh boy, we are everywhere now. It's moving a little bit too slow. Might have to restart it. That's one way to get it back up and kind of running again. User share SecList. Oh my goodness. All right, we'll get there. Okay. Attack W slash user share SecList. Just give it time to be able to do things. You share SecList. We're going to do fuzzing, LFI, and then we can go ahead and we can hit tab twice if we want to, like right here, and see what can we actually use, right? Let's just do, I like to use the Jahidix one, or whatever you want to call it, like right here. I like to use that like right there. All right, and now remember, we do need to put in that different data that we had, so we do need to say, it was attack D if I remember correctly. We do need to say PHP ses ID equals, we need to give it that, and then our security of low, right? So let's go and grab that PHP session ID like real quick, and we'll grab our security low, and we can go ahead and we can start this attack off, because as we know, we do have to log in to be able to get to this part. So we grab that PHP session ID like right there. Security equals low. All right, let's go ahead and try that. And we see we're getting a lot of stuff back again. Let's go ahead and do it attack AC again. To auto filter right. And we can see, are we going to get anything back that it actually finds? All right, Looks like we may mess something up here, right? It doesn't look like, oh, probably because PHP session ID is not spelled correctly. I must say, this doesn't look right to me. Let's go ahead and do that. There we go. Everything seems to be moving a little bit fast now too. PHP session ID is correct. Security does equal low. It should be attack D as far as I remember. Fuff, attack H. And we'll do a quick grep attack IA cook. Oh, attack B. Maybe that's why. Because attack D is post data. Attack B is for our session IDs. There we are. Okay. So we can see that we're getting a lot of different things here back, a lot of different sizes, a lot of different words, all that good stuff. So we can start to see where can we actually go within here, right? We have local file inclusion on this. So let's say we didn't actually want to go to the page. Let's say we want to look at this core config.php, right? Something we could do, we can go ahead and copy that. And what we could do here is we do a curl. You can do attack V if you want. I like to do attack V for verbose, HTTP 172.18.0.2 /DVWA /vulnerabilities FI page equals, and we'll go ahead and we'll throw that in there. And now all we're going to try to do is just call for that page. That's all we're going to do here. Okay, we get a 404 not found, probably because we didn't log in. That's most likely why. All right, but with curl, I believe we can also send up curl attack H for help, right? And we can go ahead and we can do a grep attack IA for cook again. See if we can set up cookies with curl. I'm pretty sure we actually can. Let's see here. Data maybe it would be under. Yeah, I think we got to do post data. And I think we might have to do attack D if I remember correctly. And then we just got to say PHP, pretty much same exact information that we gave up there, just this time with curl. I think we have to give it that post data link right there. Is that correct? Still gonna have 404 not found, probably because we're still typing that in incorrectly. I know that I did actually do this within your information here, but we should be able to do that attack B as far as I remember, and then just put in those pages there. We may have a 404 not found simply because we're just not doing that period slash. Let's go ahead and try for something that we know exists, right? Let's go ahead and first make sure that this is actually correct. Question mark page equals fuzz fi vulnerabilities. We spell vulnerabilities wrong. Well, I spell vulnerabilities wrong. I have no idea if you did or not. Vulnerabilities. Let's try that. Oh, that's not going to work. That's a capital I. And if it's Linux, then it is case sensitive. All right, and then there we go. Okay, cool. So we did do that. We did give it that information. Actually, are we actually getting something here? It's looking like we have some illegal characters in there. I believe it's actually attack B even for curl, not attack D. I believe this is also attack B. There we go. Okay, awesome. So we got our information here, right? And so we don't have to actually go out to that web page. We can just curl for that web page. Okay, same exact thing with that PHP that we did. The PHP exploit that we did where we set up that PHP, we could just curl that web page. It just did attack B and then did everything from there. Okay, so let's go ahead and try with something that we know exists, such as an Etsy password, right? So we can say, hey, I want to go ahead and curl this. That also more easily allows you to save it onto your file system. Page equals /Etsy password. All right. And we'll see if we go ahead and we pull that down or not. And it doesn't look like we are. It looks like it doesn't like something here. I'll click Windows. Yeah, something it does not like. Maybe did I spell something wrong again? Probably because I have too many question marks in that page. Huh. I'm really messing this part up. Okay, we'll try that like right there. And there we are. Okay, so now we have our Etsy password like right there. We see everything. There's our MSF admin again. So we can try to do different things with that local file inclusion right there to be able to find different parts of a system, right? And then you can also make your own file if you want to. Just like we've said before, make your own file and start to look at different things. So let's go ahead and let's back out of here now. Let's go to our SQL injection. So for SQL injection, okay, we have our user ID, okay, like right here. We can try different things. We can try something like, we can just put in a apostrophe there, hit submit, and we do have an error in our SQL syntax. That means that we most likely have some type of SQL injection going on. So we can try that, or 1 equals 1. Now, you should never do that in real life, the or 1 equals 1, because you can actually delete an entire database, okay? So we do see things. Things come back, right? We have information here, and with that information, what we're able to do is we're able to move throughout a system, or be able to utilize brute force, or that file inclusion, or whatever else, right? But we do see that we did get information here. So how do we actually start to break this down further, right? So what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and we want to see how many tables there are first. We could do that with order by. All right, an order by command here. So we can say apostrophe order by 1. All right, we don't get an error. What about order by 2? Order by 2. We don't get an error. What about order by 3? And as soon as we get an error, is right, okay, we have an error. So we know there's 2 tables. That's what we now know, okay? With that information, we can now start to break down those different tables. We can see if we can continue to find things, right? So let's see if that actually did work or not. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to use version like real quick, okay? We're going to select the first table. Then we're just going to say, hey, add version, because there's only 2 tables, right? So the second table should show us the version. All right, and it does. The first table is first name, second table is surname, and there's our version. Okay, we could end up changing that up if we wanted to. We could say add version like right here, and then we could just put a 2 down here and hit submit. There we go. Okay, again, we're able to do this any way we want to. We got our add version. So now on the first portion, we have our version like right there. So now we know the version of this MySQL. Now what we need to do is we need to start to break down this guy to be able to see how it's actually broken down inside the database itself. Okay, everything I'm copying and pasting here is coming straight from your PDF. All right, we do union select null database. We'll hit submit. All right, and we see that the database is called DVWA. So now from here, when we see that DVWA, we can go ahead and we can see what the information schema looks like. There's our information schema like right there. Okay, we have DVWA, Metasploit, MySQL, OAuth 10, TikiWiki, and TikiWiki 195. If you remember whenever we went into MySQL, you can see all those different things. Or if you've gone to MySQL yet, excuse me, we haven't done that yet. But you would be able to see all these different tables in there. Okay, so now we can go ahead and we can try to look at DVWA because that's what we're working on right now with. So let's try to look at that. Okay, let's go ahead and look at that command like real quick. So all we're doing is just doing union select null and then table name. Okay, null, there's no first name, right? We have 2 tables. The table name from the schema, the information schema, where the table resides, right? Where table schema equals DVWA. All right, awesome. So now we have guestbook and users. So we probably want to look at users, right? That's what would be something that we want to look at, see if we can find passwords or whatever else. So let's go ahead and look at that users one and see if there's any more tables inside of there or any columns inside of there. And it doesn't really look like it. We just see users. So, okay, we have their user ID, their first name, their last name, the user, their password, and then their avatar. So these are really the 2 that we want to look at, like right there, right? Is that user and password. And continuing this on, okay, we can go ahead and I believe in your notes here, we actually look at the avatar. But what you want to look at, or what I want you all to look at, is actually the password. All right, awesome. Okay, so there's the avatars for all different users. Now, what you can go ahead and do on your own is go ahead and try to look at the password, right? So you have union select null, concatenate the first name, all right, and then the avatar. Okay, so we have our first name, we have what the surname is, and then the avatar, right? We can also try maybe users, but like I said, I want you guys to look at the password for each user. Okay, and there's our users like right there. All right, and now it's up to you guys to use the passwords and then put those passwords to that user. Okay, try to see if you can do that. The passwords will be hashed, So that's a good time to try to use John the Ripper to crack the hashes for those passwords. I would highly suggest you use a word list like rocku.txt and not the word list that we have for the course, although you will crack a couple with the word list for the course, but rocku.txt will crack many, many more. Now we did that, let's go ahead and let's see how to do this within, let's say something like, well, I don't know, Burp Suite, right? So let's go ahead and fire up Foxy Proxy here, and we'll go to Options. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Proxies, and we're going to add a new proxy in. And we're just going to say, hey, this is going to be called Burp for Burp Suite, right? Host name is going to be 127.0.0.1 on port 8080. We can go ahead and we can save that now. We don't need a password or a username in this. Once that's saved, we can now start up Burp Suite. So we'll start up Burp Suite. We'll fire this up real quick. Now, Burp Suite does act a little bit strange whenever you're working on Dockers, things like that. So it may take a minute. It may give some problems, things like that. But we'll go ahead and we'll give it a quick try here. So while Burp Suite's firing up, go ahead and take a little break here, and we'll get back to it whenever it fires up. All right, we can see that we fired up Burp Suite. Let's go ahead and hop over to Settings. You go to User Interface, you go to Display. You can actually make it a dark display, dark mode, however you really want to do it. All right, and we can increase the font like a little bit. I increased mine to 20 like right there. And we'll also get this full screen. And there we go. From here, we can also change how our connection is made. This is something that you would have to do whenever you are on an actual project as an actual penetration tester, because you're going to be using some type of jump machine, right? Or an internet machine. So everyone that's doing a penetration test on that network, they're all having the same IP address kind of thing, right? So if you're doing an external, then you'll be using your SOCKS proxy like right here. Your proxy host most likely be 127.0.0.1. You have your proxy chains 4.com file filled out, which we are actually going to see later on whenever we do the Active Directory portion of it. And then from there, you would also put in your proxy port, such as in like 1080 or 9050 or whatever else. But that's going a little bit above and beyond. That's when you actually have a job doing this. Let's hop over to proxy. All right, we're going to turn our intercept on. And all we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to call for this page. All right, and we'll just say user ID A. And Foxy Proxy is up and running, and we need to turn on our Burp Suite one, and we're going to say submit. Now, when we submit that, Burp Suite has intercepted it. Okay, we have intercepted that request, right? We can forward it, we can drop it, we can really do whatever we want. But we can right-click and we can send that to the repeater. When we send that off to the repeater, we decide to see this ID equals A, submit equals submit. Now we can start to mess with it from here. We can send that across and say, okay, that's what it looks like, right? That's our normal page, okay? And we have a username of admin there, so okay, cool. Well, what if I put in my little apostrophe there and we send that across? We have an error in our SQL syntax. So instead of continuing to try to run things within the web page itself, we could just use Burp Suite and set that off to the repeater. Now, something else we could do with Burp Suite, and this is right where things are going to start to realize why we're using this, is we can right-click and we can save this file. So now we don't need to worry about the cookie information, right? It's already here. We have our cookie data here. We have all the information that we need to be able to attack this with something like SQL map. So let's go ahead and save this item. All right, we're going to save this in our Metasploitable 2 folder here. We'll just call it SQL.txt. Hop back over into our terminal. And what we can do from here is we can do an SQL map, techr SQL.txt. Now you're going to tell it to go ahead and utilize that file and start to try to figure out if we're able to have SQL injection within that file. And immediately it does. Right? It immediately says, hey, it looks like the backend database management system is MySQL. All right, we'll say yes. For main test, do you want to include that? Yes. All right, if it's a capital letter, that's the default, so you know. That's what MySQL is telling you to use. And we'll go ahead and we'll let SQL map run now, and I'll be right back. All right, now that SQL map has ran, we can see that, yes, this is vulnerable to SQL injection. So let's go ahead and start trying to drop things. We'll say, hey, I want to look at the databases, right? Or I want to look at TAC DBS, right? I want to look at databases. TAC DBMS equals MySQL. We know this, right? equals MySQL. There we go. And what else we can do? We can also do something called tat batch. What tat batch does is says, hey, go ahead and answer those questions you saw before. Just go ahead and answer them for me. Okay. Oh, I did tat DBMS. It should be tat D, but we'll just leave it just like that. Okay. I want to see the database management systems, right? Or I want to see the databases, the DBS, right? So now what we can do is we can say, hey, I want to go ahead and do DVWA, tat tables. I want to see what tables are in DVWA. Users, okay? I want to use the tables for users, right? So we'll say tat D, tat T users, tat columns. Let's see what columns there are. Oh, cool. We found password and user ID and also the user and everything else. Okay, cool. So we'll say, hey, go ahead. I can just look at just one column, or I can say tat dump. And since we did a tat batch, it's going to automatically try to see what those hashes are, crack those hashes for us. And it does. It cracks all the hashes. And we can see that the username admin has the password of password. Gordon has password ABC123. His name is Gordon Brown. And we just keep going through this, right? This is great stuff. We have now cracked their database. We have their users. We have their hashes. We have all their usernames and everything else. And this is the information we found within that database. So we have seen in the news and things like that how important databases are. Databases are stolen all the time, right? And then they're sold and things like that. Credit card databases, whatever else. So being able to obtain this type of information from the exterior, not being an internal, but actually from an external, that is huge. That is a critical vulnerability. The test is immediately stopped in real life, and we call the organization. We're like, hey, you have SQL injection, and I'm able to drop an entire database onto my system. As usual, we'd want to save this information, things like that, right? Take screenshots and everything else so that the organization knows about it. But that is SQL map. You see, much easier, right? So let's go ahead and use that SQL map again. I guess it's SQL blind. All right, now we're not going to get anything back with SQL blind. It won't show us any information. Make sure you turn off your Foxy proxy or else that's just going to keep trying to intercept. So let's go ahead and go to SQL blind. Okay, and we'll try this again. We'll do our little thing like right there, that or 1 equals 1. All right, and we're not getting anything on this, right? No, we actually got that. We shouldn't even got that back, but we didn't see anything whenever we put that guy in first. So what we can do the same exact thing, right? We can say TAC A, and we can go ahead and send this to our burp suite. And what you guys are going to do after that is go ahead and utilize the SQL injection blind one. And I want you guys to go ahead and drop down the database the same way that you did before. You're going to see a lot of same information, so SQL map might actually get mad at you, be like, hey, this information is the same or whatever else. But go ahead, give that a try, save the file utilizing burp suite, and then call for that file from Metasploit or from SQL map, right? So looking back at what we did here, we did our file inclusion, right? And we did our SQL injection. Okay, SQL injection, usually it's not that easy with just apostrophe or 1 equals 1. Like I said, you never want to do that on an actual site. But putting that apostrophe in there will usually break things that run on SQL. All right, SQL map, great tool to use for whenever you're trying to do SQL injection. On certain tests, it is not allowed to be used. And that is a big fear that people have. But on those tests also, it's mostly Boolean-based SQL injection, and I've never heard of anyone ever getting blind-based SQL injection without being able to use SQL map and things like that. So I wouldn't really worry too much into that or look too deep into it. A lot of people do get scared of it. It's not that difficult, especially when it's Boolean-based and you're doing your and/ors and things like that. So hopefully you all learned something, and I will see you all in the next lesson.